Welcome, everyone. I'm Robert Meekemiller, one of your board of directors here. So I'd like to welcome you to the Smart Life Forum, Silicon Valley Health Institute. We usually start off with some questions that you may have. We have plenty of experts here. We have our technical advisor, Steve Fowkes, Dr. Bern Friedlander, and many experts here to answer some good questions for you. Does anybody have any questions to start off with? You have a question?
What's the latest on Fukushima? Is it raining down on us yet?
We're in a drought, I hate to tell you. Do I have to run from the rain? No, you wait till the rain, then you gotta worry.
Deborah, you have any feedback on Fukushima?
Yes. There's been some reports of the mammalian contamination in Alaska and some unexplained die-offs that have been potentially associated with it. And obviously, the seafood is a serious issue in terms of export, and there's not adequate inspection. The real issue is the lack of information about the stability of the rods that are still underwater, and they're in the process of moving them now, and we don't hear much about it. So I think that in that regard, it might be good news that we don't hear much about it. On the other hand, I don't think any of us has much faith that we're getting full and complete information out of Japan, and it's a very serious problem. There's someone in the back.
Do you know if the Geiger counter could detect the radiation in the food, or?
No, generally not. You're dealing with different types of radiation. It depends on what's absorbed, and food tends to absorb different things than what you get in the air, and the Geiger counter is, better for things like that. The kinds of things that Homeland Security goes and monitors for, I was just talking to someone today, is really neutron, which is dirty bomb stuff, or gamma. And neither of those is going to be associated with the Fukushima. It's going to be more like tritium or cesium, iodine. Those are the other radionuclides. But there may be others in the room that have more information than I do about this.
Thank you. Bernd has another way to protect yourself.
About 10, 15 years ago, I worked with, 20 years ago, I worked with Mirzalov Kulik, who's the world authority in zeolite. And actually, I met him through Jim Constead, who you all remember, through the water technology. And he was on board with us he was the authority on zeolite. There's nobody better than him. And I still speak with him. He's now working in the area of water industry and safety in water. Now, one of the things we use quite a bit was cabasite. It's a form of zeolite, but it's totally different and unique. The Japanese are ordering tons and tons of this to put in their water system and agriculture, and they're also having the individuals take it, because cabasite is the only one that actually pulls cesium out of the body and out of the water. It's the only known product. The other thing, I hate to tell you this, but I have worked with zeolite for 20-somewhat years, and Anna can tell you she's used it, and there's a lot of physicians who've used it. And I have spoken with the CEOs of the companies who are owners of zeolite. Liquid zeolite does not work. We did what's called rectal testing with 5 different MDs. And Wyora was a big thing at one time, and we actually provided them zeolite cabasite combinations at that time with a group of physicians. And one of them was a very well-known, he was working with a physician in Texas, and I can't, he'll come to me, the name. He's very well-known. He was lecturing at ACAM, and Frank Schallenberger knows him. But we gave him a combination of zeolite and a nanoparticles mesh size, and the cabasite. It was the only thing that they had results with rectal, fecal matter showing the actual heavy metals coming out in people. And there was a woman here who used to belong to our group here, and her son had a severe overload of heavy metals, mercury, and had autism. And she, out of nowhere, told me about the incidents when she was getting the zeolite from Anna Coulter. that her son overcame the problem. All the mercury was gone. The autism was almost completely gone. And she was a member here. I don't know, I should have taken her name. But zeolite in liquid form, like what Gary Gordon said, I have a little bit wondering about how effective that is. I know the company very well, Results. I actually know George Larson, the owner of the company. And we used the material and we gave it to these doctors and they saw no measurable results in the fecal. That's how you measure what's going on. So I would say only in powder form does it work. And I am working with a new company because the cavicite material is becoming depleted by the Japanese. So a source that was coming out of New Mexico and Arizona is almost totally gone. So we uncover a Canadian company that's working with us, so we are now getting another source of it, and we'll have that available very shortly.
Did you have another question? Okay.
Yeah, I don't know how many folks have looked at magnetism to pull out some of the heavy metals. I was at a conference. I heard of Dr. Bonley, and I don't know if you know. Maybe you guys know Bonley, with the increase in the natural magnetism of the Earth's field. He has magnet beds, that type of thing, and what he claims is, at least in his webpage, that sleeping on this bed, which is about 20 times the Earth's Tesla, the natural amplification of the Earth's magnetism will allow the positively charged ions, the heavy metals, to come across the cell membrane, which they won't come across without the magnetism. And maybe some other things do it too, I don't know, but at least the magnetism will pull it across, then it gets solubilized, and then with DMSA, it can pull it out, or just the magnetism itself. Now he says it comes out in the urine. I don't know about the feces, but anyway, that's something I've heard about.
Bernd, I have a question about, you were talking about the fecal excretion, and most of the practitioners I know who are using the nano-sized colloidal zeolite are using it for urinary excretion, not for that. Did you bother to measure urinary excretion at the same time?
Yeah, Frank, a group of ACAM physicians did do the both urine and fecal. And like that time where Waiori was a big company, there wasn't really a profound effect that they noticed with the, again, Mirsalov Kulik, who actually did all the research, C-O-L-I-C. Look him up. You'll see all the data and evidence that he's done. He himself looked at the liquid form and found not to have any effects at all. And actually, urine was the first thing we used, and then there was a new system. Later on, some of the doctors started looking at the fecal matter and to see what's coming out of there, and they saw a tremendous amount of heavy metals coming out through that excretion. So they did both. And they found that the liquid, I actually brought in a guy to this meeting a long time ago, John Karsnich. He owns a company here. He owns over 200 patents on zeolite. And he will tell you the same thing I will tell you. They're doing actual clinical studies right now with the military on zeolite. His name is John Karsich. I'll bring him back to you if you want to hear him speak on what they're doing with the military.
So is the original question was radiation. So does the cavalite have an effect on the radiation? And this, because these are...
Yeah, cavicite has an effect only on the radiation. Zeolite does not. Cavicite does nothing to do with heavy metals or anything. That's why the depletion of cavicite is going down because of the Japanese and other countries ordering tons and tons and tons of this, and all the owners of these cavicite mining are almost depleted. So we found one in Canada that has an enormous amount of mining going up there for cavicite right now.
Okay, any other questions?
How about spirulina and chlorella if you take it orally and also in colonics to get rid of heavy metals, radiation, just roto-rooter your whole body?
Chlorella has some
Detoxification.
yeah, it's got some good presentation. Also,
Microphone.
yeah. You know, chlorella, you know, when I was working with the Japanese way back, you know, and they were using it a lot, and they, you know, they have seen some results with it. And so, you know, Dr. Mura, you need to know about him. O-M-U-R-A. He's a doctor that trains only physicians, and he uses cilantro. He's big in cilantro for pulling out a lot of these heavy metals, and he's really big. And he's published a number of papers. You want to look him up. His name is Dr. Muro. He does the 5-finger test. You know, he's very famous, and he teaches mostly MDs and dentists his work. And I have spoken to a number of dentists and MDs who actually know him, and they are amazed by his results. And cilantro's, no, O-M-U-R-A, Mura, Dr. Mura. He's in, I think, Columbia University. He's an MD and a PhD, and he also, you know, practices there. And he teaches called the ring technique. We should bring him up here one day.
Okay, any other, also too, saunas. I mean, don't forget saunas. Saunas are great detoxification methodologies, so. Okay, any other questions?
This is just, it's not a question, just an announcement that Michio Kaku, he went to Coverly High School here. And he's going to be giving a talk March 2nd at 2 o'clock at Fox Theater in Redwood City on his new book. So that might be interesting. He's one of the guys that came up with the string theory and all this other stuff I don't understand. And he's been on PBS and BBC and with the series there and so forth. So
What's the book about?
something about the mind, I forgot. So
Okay, any other questions, comments?
Thanks. FMBR has their talk next on the 28th, and the Foundation for Mind Being Research, and that talk is going to be Messages from the Afterlife with Mark Ireland, and that's the fourth Friday, 28th at Unity at 7:30. And there's flyers out on the table.
Yeah, I'd like to make an announcement too, that anybody who would like to have participate in a working group that I'm doing on self-care technologies a week from tonight. If you want to register, go to meetup.com and search for Project Wellbeing. We'll make the announcement for that.
Is it online?
Yes.
Meetup.com, meetup.com, and then just search for Project Wellbeing. Steve's our technical advisor. Man's a genius, so there's a great opportunity to learn a lot. So really good meetings. Okay.
Welcome, everybody. It's so pleasant to see all these new faces again. I'm going to be selling these books, and the name of the book is The Truth About the Cell Phone Radiation. I just got the books. I glanced through it. It's very exciting. They're only $15. I'd like to see if you're interested, come on up and purchase one from me. And we also have these free. Everybody can pick one up. And we're going to be starting the seminar in a few minutes, so please, all your cell phones off. Thank you.
Put them by your brain.
Any other questions before we start with the main speaker? Announcements?
Is anyone familiar with the new report in Science direct science on graphene being used to protect and shield against electromagnetic fields? Graphene. G-R-A-P-H-E-N-E. One molecule, carbon.
Carbon nanotubes also absorb EMF, but it's very specific to the dimensions of the graphene or the length of the nanotube. And so they're not broad spectrum protectors, they're narrow single frequency protectors.
Can they be engineered so that they can protect against specific frequencies?
Certainly, theoretically, absolutely.
That would radically change the way we have to approach a lot of things in telecom.
Well, I suppose we could like put it into your cosmetics or something like that, or wear a hat with it or something. But I think that the butterfly antenna technology is much more realistic because it basically looks at the cell phone broadcasting from your cell phone to get to the tower, which is the bulk of the massive exposure into the brain. And the butterfly antenna, instead of having a spherical antenna where there's a round broadcasting field where a huge amount of it goes into your head, there's a lobe that goes in front of the phone and behind the phone, and therefore very little of it couples into your head.
I think Jim Johnson may have a few comments. Jim's been working on this for about 2 decades.
My goodness, Steve, I couldn't have asked for a better lead-in on that. God bless. No, I was just going to answer your question, Deborah, that carbon, of course, absorbs, and Steve is right. It's very frequency specific. And the use of what Steve was describing is interferometry, like radio jamming. Instead of using one antenna, it uses 2 antennas, and they're phased, and they just simply cancel out and create a figure-8 pattern. So it's not a technology that we're going to talk about tonight because I came here for Deborah, but shields don't work according to the lead scientist. And you could take the radiation and perhaps capture it in a sort of a net tuned to the frequencies and then re-radiate like Pong does. That reshapes the energy, but it doesn't capture all of the energy radiating from the antenna. You really have to get it at the source, which is the output of the phone, and then run it through the proper antenna. So it's really best approach.
Would you agree that the Pong might be described as diffusing?
It is. It is absolutely diffusing. It captures it. It captures it just like a net or a transformer that would capture the radiated fields from the antenna. Then it sends it down the circuit through its own antenna, excuse me, and then redistributes it, which is a good approach. The best approach is essentially get the telecoms to incorporate this technology in the cell phones, and that's what we're working on. Oh, sorry. I don't mean to take the wind out.
No, it's fine.
Then you're on to talk.
All right, that's fine.
Deborah will give us much more detail, I'm sure. Are you going to mention the Okay, we'll hold off then.
How do you spell that? P as in like ping pong.
Like the game. Ping pong.
What is a pong? Pong Research.
They bounce you back and forth.
Jim Johnson, who has a company called Fortis and has been developing some alternative hardware and hardware technologies that can be used, was referring to this as well. Pong Research is a company that makes cases for iPhones and iPads that are designed to, in effect, redirect the radiation. And as was mentioned by Steve, the way all phones are designed now, they have symmetrical antennas. And so since when you hold something smack against your body or next to your head, half of that radiation gets into you. How many of you have iPhones here today? Great. Please go to settings on your iPhone now. Seriously, this is a sort of mini start, all right? Go to settings on your phones and let me know when you got there, and I'm going to walk you through something that I think I'd like to know how many of you will be surprised, and thank you for your help, all right? And we'll continue. When you got to settings, all right, settings. Yes. When you get to settings, then go to general. All right, general, which is sort of in the middle. Can you find my phone? I want to turn it off. It's in here somewhere. And then when you go to general, go all the way up to the top to about. And then after you get to about, go scroll all the way down, almost to the bottom, to the word legal. And click on legal, and that will give you something that says RF exposure. All right? Now, in that RF exposure, it says to reduce RF radiation to the as tested levels, the cell phone must be held at least 10 millimeters away from the body. And if you have a case, you can exceed the as tested exposure guidelines. How many of you who are looking at this, excepting Susan, have never seen it before? All right. Jim, you didn't know this either? No. Okay, so here you have it. You have been warned, right? Sorry? Yes, it was so easy to find. Well, look, all smartphones today come with some warning like this. They all contain some warning like this. And if you here at the Silicon Valley Health Institute, you didn't know this, and you're the smartest people in the world, well, then, I mean, this is telling us something really important. Because, in fact, my advice is 10 millimeters is not quite enough. You probably need to keep it about 2.54 centimeters, or probably more like 5 centimeters, 2 inches away, all right? But that distance is tremendously important because the near field that drops off with about to the third power, not just like, you know, we say the inverse square. The near field is actually to the cube. Thank you. And so here is maybe 10,000 times less exposure than here. And I'm going to show you in my talk today some of the reasons why we need to be concerned about this.
Okay, so yeah, for those of you who don't know, Bern's just telling everybody that the Samsung is the lowest.
That has the height.
No.
Yeah.
Which model?
No, when I was buying my phone, I was really concerned about the radiation level, so I went in and Googled everything, and I saw that the Samsung. Yeah, I know. We just blew it.
Which model is Samsung?
Actually, the Galaxy 2 had the lowest. This one, that's why I bought it. It's like it's 0.02. On 0.2, right? Sorry. And then we're only 0.0. I know. And then the S2 was 0.3, and the S4 was 0.3, 0.4. So it went up, and then the one I really had, the one they tried to sell me, had over 1 point something. And when you get to 2 gigahertz, you're in trouble. Forget about it. That's when it causes genetic damage.
We're going to learn about this. Let me introduce you. Okay, so, oh, yeah.
Our second speaker won't be coming. She had a medical emergency. I just got a text right now. We'll reschedule. It's PEMF, which I thought would be a good balance for this. And next Wednesday, we're having a meeting for people that are interested in chewing over the future of Smart Life Forum, how we can make it better, how we can get more people. We're open to ideas, speakers, concepts, blogs, etc. So if you're interested in coming to that, let me know.